Welcome everyone to the March 22nd meeting of our Public Works Committee. We'll begin by Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our previous meeting. Mr. Thomas on the motion, Mr. Bruno on the second. Thank you. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of approving the minutes of our previous meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll begin without objection with Parks, Recreation, and Railroad agenda. Is that acceptable?
That's correct.
Mr. Hajos, thank you. Let's begin with fish stocking.
So I just want to give a quick update. We haven't started stocking yet. We're expecting, based on water temperatures, probably within the next 2 weeks. Although with these cooler temperatures at night, it might push us out a little. One of the things I wanted to bring to your attention that we just received some word that they were going to do some stocking changes in three of our water bodies. One was Palmer Pond in the town of Chester. One was Veely Pond in the town of Warrensburg, and then the other one was Jay Pond in the town of Hague. Each one of those, they were going to propose to do something different of stocking or deleting. And I'll give you an example. They were talking about deleting at Palmer Pond 200 yearling brook trout, and Veely Pond 300 yearling brook trout, and then at Jay Pond 1,000 yearling brook trout. They stated that, and then once they actually kind of signed it into place, although they're deleting that species of fish in those ponds, they're adding the same amount of a different species. So for example, Palmer Pond, they're losing the brook trout, but they're gaining 200 more rainbow trout in that water body. We don't know the reasons behind it. It was a program that DEC was putting in place. We still haven't gotten the final word, but there won't be any less fish stocked in those ponds. It'll just be different species stocked in those ponds.
All right, anyone has any questions, please contact Mr. Hajos regarding the fish stocking program. Number 2, Kevin, state aid.
Next item on there is a state aid snowmobile grant pass-through. We just received, and the clubs are going to receive their 70%. We just received that from the state. As you recall, we only act as a pass-through for that. The money comes through to us, and then we in turn pass it on to the snowmobile clubs. So they receive their 70%. The rest of their documentation must be in by, I believe it's May 1st, for them to receive their final 30% of that pass-through grant program.
Right. Any questions from Mr. Hajos? There being none, we'll move on to item 3, Up Yonder update.
So I just wanted to give a quick update on Up Yonder and some of the things that we were doing up there. The first is the Snowshoe Program that we had this winter. It started late in the year just because we didn't have snow. I think our first hike for this year was not until I think it was 1/22. So that's late in the year for our hikes. We had a total of 237 people on naturals-led hikes. And that was either a check-in or a walk-in. And of that, we had approximately 146 rentals of snowshoes for adults and another 46 for children. And I believe we netted a total amount of $3,985 for the Snowshoe Program. The next item we have on there is the Maple Festival, which the final one took place this past weekend. There was a total of 112 people that attended the festival. The tours run, there were 12 tours, 45-minute tours. I think we brought in approximately $538 in program and parking fees and roughly another $530 in gift shop sales. So both the programs were successful, not as successful as our pancake breakfast that we always have there, but we hope with next year to bring that pancake breakfast back. One of the other things that we had to do this winter was, I don't want to call it a dredging, I want to call it a cleaning of the pond. A lot of silt comes down into that pond. If you've ever been up yonder, that's the one right as you pull in the facility. We had our excavator up there a couple weeks ago when the ground was still frozen, and we removed all that silt out of the pond to get it ready for the pond programs in the summer. And then the final thing we're doing up there is we're working with Friends of Up Beyond, creating a wetland pathway around the pond, and on the backside of the pond, there's a significant amount of wetlands. We're working with the Corps on this as well for any permitting that we'll need. And we were lucky enough to receive, I want to say probably about $2,500 from Warren County Soil and Water to buy the materials for this wetland pathway. We purchased the materials at the end of the year, and we have them in storage up on site, waiting to get our final design on the pathway plans through the wetlands.
All right, thank you. We'll move right into referral pending items. Do you want to say anything about the subdivision of land in Johnsburg?
Not as of yet. I don't have any new information. I'm waiting for Supervisor Hogan to bring me to their board meeting when they want to do a zoning change or a variance for this property.
Thanks. Kevin. We're working on it.
Yeah, it says here that for you to request that the subdivision, the request came from the town.
Correct.
So really that's I would assume what you would do is to indicate that the county has no objections.
That is correct. And if they needed any information at that meeting, that subdivision meeting at the town level, I would be there to answer any questions.
Good, very good. Item 2 pertaining to resolution number 27 of 2021, introducing a proposed local law. Kevin, you want to talk about?
Yeah, we're going to have a meeting right after this meeting, which is going to be a joint meeting of the Public Works and Public Safety Committee to discuss this next item. And that's in regards to doing a pilot program on the bike path for e-bikes and e-scooters.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And item 3.
And the final one is I've been working with the Shriner Circus and Wendell Beadnell, the presentation that he brought last month of bringing the Shriner Circus to the area in front of Countryside Adult Home on the week of July 18th of this year.
Okay, thank you. And without objection, if there are no questions for Mr. Hajo, so let's move right into our Public Works Committee agenda.
I just had one last thing to bring up for Parks and Rec, is that the RFPs for the rail bike on that section of track that's not being used will be here in purchasing on Thursday, the 24th.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So you're pretty much on schedule with that. Good work, good work. Very good. Any questions? Mr. McGowan?
Thank you. Even though I'm not on the committee, but talking about the railroad and the rail port, I just, now with the tentative sale of that northern line, have you heard of anything for our line? I mean,
I have not heard anything on our line. I know that the Corinth has entered into a contract with a company to do a tourist train down in that area. I believe, and I don't necessarily want to speak for our county attorney's office, I believe it's still, even though there's been an approved bid on the sale of that line up there, it still has to go through the bankruptcy proceedings, which I'm not sure how fast that's going to go.
follow up? Thank you. I guess, do you kind of have a rough idea what you think it would cost to get our tracks, like, say, well, what concerns me is the tailings coming down. You know, they're heavy, but a tourist train for the Corinth, if they wanted to go up, I mean, what would be the do you think would be a cost of that we'd maybe associate if they decided to use our tracks to come up a little further north?
I'm not sure that I can necessarily put a number on that. I know that there was maintenance work that was always done by the last operator, although maybe not not to our standards, but that was done. But the track hasn't been used now for over 5 years. I'm sure there are railroad ties throughout that track that need replacement. I know that the Sacandaga Bridge, there's probably a significant amount of maintenance work that needs to go into that. I think the last time we looked at it, the replacement was at 11 million, but I think at maintenance 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago was probably 2 million. I'm sure based on the way the prices are now, it's significantly higher than that. Our track right now can run as a class 3 track, which is, I believe, at 10 miles an hour. So if somebody was to bring tailings down from Taos, if that ever takes place, they could run on our track. But again, there would be maintenance work that needs to be done. And again, we haven't done a complete inspection of that track, probably, in 3, 4, 5 years. So I'm not sure the extent of it at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and while it hasn't been mentioned in some time, let's not forget that this board passed a resolution, I believe it was in 2019, instructing the county administrator to commence abandonment procedures relative to our section of line. And so we were waiting, I'll let Ryan to speak to it, but we were waiting to see what happened with the abandonment application on the Taos section, because it was so critical to any abandonment request that we might make. And I don't know if you want to comment, Ryan.
Yeah, that's correct. I had spoken with the Surface Transportation Board. I had a good contact down there who indicated that they wouldn't rule on ours before the northern track is settled. I do have it on my agenda for this week to re-engage with the Surface Transportation Board as well as the Attorney General's office, just to get their views on what's changed here and where we're going.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yep.
Andrea?
Thank you. Has anybody in county leadership been contacted by the new potential owner of the Sanford line?
No, not Ron Conover, no.
Ryan? Kevin?
No, not by the potential owner.
Operator?
Someone associated with the operation has called in, but I haven't. I went on vacation. I haven't called back, and it wouldn't be my intention to do that unless the board wanted me to.
Right. If we receive any communication, we'll certainly get it out to the board as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Frank?
Yeah, thank you. I think as far as any maintenance, if any operator wants to use our line, they better plan on doing the maintenance, because I'm not going to support putting taxpayer money into that rail line to run tailings or a tourist train or anything else.
I mean, not to get into too deep into the weeds on this particular subject, but the Surface Transportation Board is going to want a demonstration also of the ability, the capacity, and is going to require, they don't require us to subsidize anything. So if we have a sense of what something might cost, we certainly can expect to be reimbursed for those costs as part of the process. And even with the abandonment, I don't want to sound like an expert here, but to the extent that I've done a little reading, even the abandonment application would, even if it were approved for recreational type uses, would also have as a caveat that should a rail interest surface looking to utilize it for rail, that would have a priority. Mr. Garrity.
Yeah. Do we really know who's responsible for the upkeep of our tracks? If they want to run freight across our tracks, does anybody answer who is responsible for maintaining our tracks?
We are. I mean, we own it. We own the tracks.
I know we own them, but are we forced to bring them up to accommodate the 150-ton cars out of that potentially could leave on the Taos line?
Forced. Kevin?
I'll touch base. I mean, as Ron said, or Supervisor Conover said, we are responsible for the maintenance of our tracks. But we've always put that onus on anybody who's leased our tracks. So when it used to be Hudson River Rail or whatever their name was, and then Saratoga North Creek, they did the maintenance on the track. We put it on them. So I think if something was to come about with this sale and somebody would want to use our tracks, I think we would put that onus on them.
On the
On,
person. Okay.
on the, yes.
Well, that's the point I was trying to make. I don't believe it's up to us to have those brought up to carry that type of freight over our rail tracks.
I mean, an important question. I don't have the answer to. I've heard some people comment, perhaps Ryan or Kevin, that, Ryan, the carrier privileges, are they transferable without Surface Transportation Board approval?
I don't believe so.
I mean, that's an
don't
important,
believe so
that's
either.
an important item. I mean, because one wants to be in the rail business doesn't mean that it's automatic. I mean, I would imagine, maybe we could look into this when you have your discussions, and we'll correct on this as we go forward, should a correction be required. But I believe that carrier, is it called a common carrier? Common carrier, yeah, the common carrier status that the previous owner has. I'm not sure how exactly that transfer takes place to a new person, to be honest with you. Whether the Surface Transportation Board has a role in all of that. One would think that they would, but we'll check on that as well. So yeah, I think it raises, I think to Andrea's point, I think it raises a lot of questions that maybe we need to begin the process of getting some answers to in anticipation of something. All righty. Fair enough for now? Okay, thank you. Let's move into our Public Works Committee agenda. Let's move right into 3.1, Kevin.
Sure. So the first one we have on there is under action agenda items is a notice of intent to fill position. This is MEO Light 2, and this was due to a resignation.
Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for discussion. Supervisor Stroud, Supervisor Dickinson on the second. Thank you. Any discussion? There being none, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of approving item 3.1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 2, new contract pavement marking application.
This is one of our typical contracts for pavement markings. I believe there's an ability to extend this for 2 additional years beyond this year, and this is for any pavement markings throughout the county. And the towns use this contract as well, the towns who do any striping.
Chair will entertain a motion to bring this forward for consideration. Mr. Merlino on the motion, Mr. Dickinson on the second. Any discussion? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the extension of pavement marking contract signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 3.
The next item is to ratify the actions of the Superintendent of Public Works approving a change order, which was for the H377 project, which is Sunnyside and Sunnyside East. Our county auditor had looked at some of the past resolutions we have, and I've attached them in here. My understanding always was with the approval of change orders by me, was I could approve up to a certain amount of money. I believe back in 2018, I changed it so that I could go up to $35,000 per change order, and then for a total of up to $70,000. But if I had anything above that, I would come back to committee and let the committee give the blessing to move forward if there was something above that 70,000. I guess I interpreted the resolutions in the past one way, and Larry, after he reviewed it, took a look at it, our county attorney, he kind of, I guess I want to say he saw where I was coming from, but he also thinks that it needed a little bit more clarification. So with that being said, I'm asking number 1 for the approval of the change order that I did for Sunnyside and Sunnyside East, which was for $83,000, I believe, in change, which we had enough money in the federal aid project to cover that change order. The second would be to, I guess, leaving it up to the committee. I think that when I came back in 2018 and asked for approval up to change orders, I said 10% of project cost. And I don't know who at the time that said, well, if it was a $10 million project and you're doing 10%, $1 million is a lot of money for me to approve. I would still have to let committee know that I'm doing that. So that was the kind of the number that I had in mind, but I think we had settled to 35,000. I guess I'm looking for the committee to maybe approve it up to, the 35,000 and 70,000 that I have now. But if there's anything above that, just to come back to committee and let you know that I have something above that and get your kind of a blessing without having to go through a resolution. The fact of the matter is I wouldn't bring anything to committee without having the money in a project anyways to be able to do it. Most of the change orders that I have received in the past have always come on federal aid projects, and we've always had money in the project, or we're able to go back to the MPO and ask for more money. So I guess I'm asking, we can leave it at the 35 and 70. I'm okay with that. But I would ask that if there's anything above that 70, that I would just come back and let the committee know that it's above that 70, and for them to give me kind of a green light without having a resolution. But again, you would still have to approve money if there was a significant money change in that project, which would be increasing a capital project or such. So that's the resolution that you have in front of you.
Okay, that you've heard that. Let's bring this forward for discussion. Mr. Dickinson on the motion, Mr. Stroud on the second, then we'll have discussion. Mr. Dickinson.
If we change the limits, what would you be looking at?
It's hard to say. The last time I asked for 50 and 100,000, and I originally asked for 10% of project cost, and then I asked for 50,000 for initial, 100,000 for a combined. Most of my change orders probably aren't more than that. The sunny side was a significant amount of pavement that we had to put along the edge of the road where we had a stormwater problem. And again, the money was in the tip, or we were able to get the money in the tip to approve that project. So I would propose 50 to 100 if everyone is okay with that. I won't necessarily go with the 10%, but again, if it's above the 100, I would come back to the committee and just ask you to give me your blessing. But I would never move the project forward beyond that, because I'd still have to get the approval increasing a capital project and such. So there's always the money portion of it that'll come after anyways.
I'd like to revise that, move the limits up to 50 and 100, and then after that, he'd come in and see us.
We have a motion to revise this limits up to 50 and 100. Do we have a second? Mr. Merlino on the second. I don't need to tell the committee what is happening with our capital construction costs. They're just, and the other thing to remember, and I'm sure those in the construction business know, when you're in the middle of a project and there's a change order, you can't stop the contractor and stop the project. Sometimes these decisions, they need to be made, within a very short period of time, sometimes almost immediately on site. That's just the nature of this kind of work. So you either have confidence in your people that they're evaluating it correctly, and as Kevin mentioned, beyond certain parameters, they have to come back to the board anyway. Mr. Stroud.
Yes, and I agree with you. And I've never seen a job that didn't require a change order or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And most of them, there's a timeliness, there's an immediacy, decisions have to be made. Do I negotiate? Yes, I do, when I think there's room for negotiation, because sometimes they'll try and take advantage of their situation as being the contractor on the job, but it doesn't prohibit you from negotiating it. 10% is not unusual. As a matter of fact, it's pretty much in accord with what's standard out there. So I would support 10% of any project being, something that Kevin could approve on his own. But in any event, 50 and 100 is reasonable as well, but whatever the consensus of the board is.
Anyone else? All right. So just so we clarify the motion. The motion is to ratify the decisions that he's already made relative to the project specified, and to modify the limits from what they presently are to 50 and 100. Am I stating that correctly?
That's correct.
And that's the motion, Mr. Dickinson. Mr. Merlino? All right, you've heard the motion. The motion's been restated. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. None opposed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Let's move on to item 4.
Next item we have on there, as I list as a Dasney grant. So back in 2018, Ryan, I believe I got this message from you, is that the Senator Sex's office had some Dasney funding, and they were looking to see that we could use it for anything. So we had submitted back in 2018 that we would put it towards snow and ice equipment, plows, sanders. We never heard word until 2021 that we received the funding. And at that time, I think Dan was, already now a senator as opposed to an assemblyman anymore. So the money did come through. I never brought it through at that point. I guess I didn't even think about it because we were so far removed from when we initially requested the money. So we received $50,000 for snow and ice equipment, and this is to accept the grant disbursement agreement with the dormitory authority for that funding. We purchased all the equipment already, and they're going to pay us for it. So as I said, it's $50,000 worth. And just to let everybody know, I may have to do this again, hopefully not this late in the game, but we still had money, I believe it was $250,000 into Senator Little's office when she was in there, which we revamped last year it was $250,000. We revamped to $500,000 because the tower for the sheriff's office, they rejected. So we added more for road work in there, and I'm fingers crossed that maybe that'll still come through. So when it does, I will bring that one back to committee as well.
All right, let's bring this forward go ahead, Ryan.
So that's what I was going to ask. This is a separate deal from the $500,000.
That's correct.
Okay, great.
I'll bring it.
And Mr. Dickinson on the motion to bring this forward for discussion. Do we have a second? Mr. Stroh on the second. So if I'm hearing you correctly, basically, we've already expended for the equipment. This would be to reimburse those accounts.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Does everyone understand? Okay. Then are we ready for the question? All those in favor of accepting the grant disbursement from Dasney for $50,000 for purchase of equipment and to reimburse appropriate accounts signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Item 5.
Next item we have on there is the appointment of the Superintendent of Public Works. My appointment runs out as of April 22nd, which is the board meeting. This would approve the appointment for the next 4 years. If you want me.
How many years?
How many years?
4 years,
4?
based on New York State highway law.
It's a long time. I'm just kidding. I'm just bringing a little levity to the meeting,
I'll move it before he quits.
Let's bring it forward for discussion. Mr. Dickinson on the motion, Mr. Merlino, Mr. Thomas on the second. Discussion, Ryan?
Please support it. Kevin is great. I really appreciate everything you do, Kevin.
Thank you.
All righty then, Mr. McGowan.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to add that I've always enjoyed working with Kevin. And, the callbacks and the follow throughs, he really is an exceptional superintendent to work with. And I'm happy to see that you want to pull your hair out for another 4 years. So
Falling out, not pulling it out. Thank you, Supervisor McGowan.
All right then. I completely agree, Mr. McGowan, Supervisor McGowan. I completely agree.
Yeah, I do too. It's nice working with Kevin.
Yep.
Give him a call, he'll get back to you. That's
Fantastic.
really appreciated.
All right then, relative to the appointment, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the reappointment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. And maybe before we move into under discussion items, Kevin, maybe you could give us an update on that terrible washout
I will. I think in your package, there should be one more resolution in there. I brought this one late. I got the agreement back, or the county attorney's office got an intermunicipal agreement back from Saratoga County. So on our Densmore Bridge, which is the bridge between Corinth and Lake Luzerne, that has that Core 10 guide rail on it, which is rotting away and falling off the bridge onto the roadway, not into the water. So we have a proposal. All the bridges that are between any counties, and there's only two that we have, which is the County Route 44 bridge and the Densmore Bridge between our county and Saratoga County, that it's a joint ownership, and we typically split the work. Somebody will manage the contracts, one county will manage the contract this time, and then the next time we'll manage it. So this is the case in this one. We did the County Route 44 bridge last time, and the Saratoga County gave us 50% of the funds. This time, they will be managing the project, and we will provide them with the funding. The total cost of the rail project is $247,000 or $247,600, with $123,503 coming from our county coffers. We have budgeted for this. We knew this project was coming up. So this would be to enter into an municipal agreement with Saratoga County for the cost associated with that guide rail replacement.
All right, let's bring this forward for consideration. Mr. Dickinson on the motion, second. Mr. Stroud on the second. Any discussion, questions for Superintendent Hajos? Mr. Bruno?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just out of curiosity, Superintendent Hajos, do you know how old that guide rail is? Any idea?
I would say probably in the vicinity of 20 to 25 years old when I think, and Gene, you could probably, but I think that was probably when Densmore was done, somewhere about that, probably about 20 to 25 years ago.
I think
A lot of that Core 10 guide railing, while it provided a nice, I guess I want to say Adirondack look, you'll see that even on the Northway, DOT has replaced just about all of it going up to the Northway and the Adirondack Park.
Right.
And we have seen it on a couple of our bridge rails as well, where it's actually rotting from the inside out.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily see it on the
The
outside.
whole premise behind Core, I don't know if you're all familiar with Core 10. It's unfinished, if you will,
Right.
steel, whatever, that's steel. The idea was that you didn't paint it or anything, and the resultant surface oxidation would protect the steel. So I'm just curious how well that had worked out, because you see these towers and stuff that are all brown, or the guide rail is brown. That's Core 10, and I always wondered if it was really. The idea was you didn't have to paint it, maintain it, yada yada yada. So I just.
Yeah, and again, the deterioration is not coming from the outside. It's actually coming from the inside out.
Right. Because it wasn't sealed. Thank you.
Supervisor McDowell?
Yeah, thank you, even though I'm not on the committee, but, that's sure interesting, because it's basically because of the cold, and then the sun hits that rail, and does the condensation inside, where does it go? And I've seen it, a lot of it on railings. You see the bottom of the concrete open up and stuff like that, and it's like, well, what's happening? You could wrap it and everything. I said, it's the condensation in the water that ends up down in there, and then it rusts and it expands and it pops. So, it looks nice on the overpasses, but that's a solid and not a core. So, it's sure interesting. We didn't think that one out, did we?
Is that what they call weathering steel? Is that what
Yeah,
they
it's
call
Core 10
weathering
yeah,
steel?
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not copper or aluminum, is it? That's not, okay. Are we ready for the question then relative to the railing? All those in favor of approving the expenditure signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone.
To just give an update on Amsterdam Road, County Route 19, Sunday morning, about, I guess I want to say 7 o'clock, I received a call that we had water coming over our road at County Route 19. This is up by Hidden Lake. By the time I got up there, there was probably 2 inches of water coming over the road. It had probably receded it by the time I had gotten up there, but it did cause a significant number of damage on the edge of our road. Originally, when I got the call, it was only out to the white line that was eroding away. By the time I got there, it was to the center line of the road. The Beaver Dam or something up on Marshall Brook, which feeds, I believe, out of Hidden Lake, must have let go. And we didn't have a significant amount of water or rain Saturday night. I probably had a period, at least out of my house, for about a half hour, but then it was over with. So all from what we can tell was that it was a beaver dam that let go and eroded away that portion of the road. That happens to be the same portion of the road that eroded away in the 2011 storm, and actually eroded away back in 2006. So it's a recurring theme in that area. Hidden Pond or Hidden Lake is basically a beaver lake anyways. We have looked at it. The culverts that we have in place there are sufficient enough for Marshall Brook to drain the stormwater in there. They're not sufficient enough to handle a beaver dam break. That's too much water. The depth from the edge of road to the inlet of those culverts is about 15 feet down. So that gives you an idea how much water was in that area that came over the top of that road. When we got to look at it, when the water receded, and it took about 4 or 5 hours on Sunday for the water to go down, it should be open probably by late this afternoon, if not first thing tomorrow morning. This is what we're going to consider a temporary fix. Again, the culverts are probably sized correctly, but I don't think this will be the last time that we have. And you know, it's one of those things that we can't see when a beaver dam lets go or where the beaver are. I mean, it was a significant, and actually Supervisor Leggett walked up in there. Would you say it was probably a half a mile to a mile up before that?
Oh, on
Yeah.
the mountain back.
Yeah, yeah, at least that amount. So we don't necessarily see those all the time, but we'll see it when the water comes down through. So with that being said, this is a temporary fix. I spoke with Jim Lieberman yesterday. He believes that Soil and Water has some grant funding, climate change resiliency grant funding that we can use to cover this cost, which is great. But we're also going to look to put in the possibility of a grant under the hazard mitigation grant program, and see if we can get a box culvert in there and do some realignment of the stream. Right now, Marshall Brook comes down and takes a 90-degree turn and goes underneath Davis Road, which is the town road, and then goes probably for another 200 feet and takes another 90-degree turn under our road. It's not the ideal situation for that stream. I'd rather, with approval from DEC, to straighten that stream out and have it come right down to a box culvert. So that hazard mitigation grant funding has to be in June, and we'll hear by, I believe, around December of whether or not we receive the grant. There is a benefit cost analysis associated with these grants. We might make out based on resiliency and climate change, but if it's to serve a certain number of people, we may not make out. Usually you have to have a benefit cost analysis of 1 or above, and some of the other projects that we've done, for example, the one we were looking at Main Street in North Creek, under the Tiger program that we talked about possibly doing on the RAISE program, we can't even compete. It just doesn't get us above that number one. But with talks with Jim Lieberman, I think with climate and stormwater and hazard mitigation, we may be able to get this one through. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. We'll apply for the grant funding. In the meantime, we might reach out to DEC and see if there's any initial stream realignments that we can do. But again, with that amount of water coming in that short period of time, even if we had a box culvert in there, one log has to get jammed up on the front of that culvert, and then it just escalates from there.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's not only the volume of water, but usually when it's coming from a pond, an elevated pond, that water is picking up velocity all the while, and it's picking up all that debris as well. And when it gets to that culvert, which is probably designed for a 20 or 30-year storm, it'll block that culvert. And then, if there's enough water, that road is going to take a hit. We have some experience with that in Bolton. Dennis?
Is that Hidden Lake?
That is Hidden Lake.
Well, Hidden Lake is a earthen dam. And the beaver come down, it's got a drop inlet. It's like 36, 42 inches in diameter. The beaver come down and they block that up.
That whole area up.
They raise the water and then it goes over and it's too much for the overflow chute and it takes the dam out. So my point is that maybe we should contact the dam authority and tell them before they put that dam back in again, if they're going to let them put it in, they need to do a good job with that because they're apparently not doing it. That's the third or fourth time it's done that.
Mr. Hedges?
And that'll be the initial reach out with DEC. Again, I think as Supervisor Conover mentioned, most of our pipes are for anywhere from a 25 to a 50-year storm. Although we've seen, and not just the county, the towns have seen it as well, that most of these 25 and 50-year storms any of our structures can't handle it. I mean, we had a 12-foot box culvert up in Hague that should be able to handle that type of storm. And it took out New Hague Road twice. So, I mean, that's significantly, our size accordingly. But again, that amount of water in that short period of time is just not going to do that. But we're going to reach out to DEC and the dam authority up there to see what we can do and discuss it with them.
Welcome to the Adirondacks, right? Go ahead, Dennis.
The storm characteristics have changed drastically.
Have.
They're more intense storms. They may be the same volume, but they're more intense. That's why the structures are failing.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes, thank you. And how, can we do any beaver control up there?
We can. We've done that before. We've had other areas that we have a contractor who does beaver trapping for us and removes them out of the area. We can have them look up there, but the certain situation like that, it's so far up, we don't know, that, when they're up there, and that's right. It's walking on private property. We've done it before. We've actually kept them out in Bolton on County Route 11. That was always a beaver area there until we lost County Route 11, and we've since kept them out of that area. But we could send somebody up there, but I would seek permission from the landowners.
Well, if we're gonna, build up the dam berm again with, DEC, it probably should all be, because it's actually costing them as much as it's costing us. But I mean, I don't have an objection to the Fermi little varmints, but when they start costing us money, and it seems like we've had a lot of problems up there, and I've seen when these beaver dams do let go, it's devastating to the lower land.
All righty. There being no further discussion, just wanted to make sure that Superintendent gave you an update on that project. And I mean, the good news is, to the best I haven't heard, no one was seriously hurt.
No, there's no accidents, no incidents, nobody went off the road or fell into a hole.
mean,
And
that's-
again, it'll be open by late today or tomorrow morning.
I mean, that's the upside in this, and especially if something like this happens at night and you're driving down that road, you wouldn't even see it. You would go, so, the upside of this is that no one was, hurt by the event.
I just had a couple more things really quick for the
Mhm.
committee. I know we're short on time.
No, go ahead.
One of the things, and this is just for the towns, is Dan Smith from my shop, who's our shop manager, just informed me last week that the record that we've had, which is a 1976, is done. We will not be assisting anyone if they lose a trucker because we can't do it anymore. It's not safe for us to use that anymore, and the amount of money that he would have to put into it. So that would be one of the things, if approved, that I would take through budget this year, is the possibility of getting a new record, because we've always helped the towns before. And the last thing I said that I would bring this back through committee is the CDL entry-level driver training that I discussed a couple of meetings back. It's in place now. If you don't have If you hire somebody who doesn't have a CDL, they're required to go through this new entry-level program. We were trying to find areas that would be giving this or cost of the program. So we have found it at BOCES. There's the CDL driver training class A, which is basically the 30 hours of kind of field training that they would need at a cost of $2,500 per person. And then the class B CDL would be $1,250. Now that's the drive kind of experience in teaching. There's still another $450 cost for the classroom time, and that includes their books. So you're looking at anywhere from $2,950 per person to $1,700 per person to get that entry-level driver training if they don't already have a CDL. With that being said, I reached out to Liza Osendorf with employment and training, and she says that she's worked with the city of Glens Falls and may work for us, that the city is paying for half, and then she may have some funding under employment and training to cover the other half. With me bringing in MEO lights that do not have, that I'm not requiring a CDL, I don't have this money in my budget. I'll have to probably bring it back to committee for some funding if I can't cover the cost, but I'm hoping to work with Liza so that maybe they cover half that cost as well, but just for information for the towns as well.
Yeah, I would just add just that that's a very important program. Because our ability to secure those drivers, not only ours, but the states and the towns is just, seems like it's just so difficult to find these people these days to fill vacant spots. So I think having that kind of program, I think is very, very important. And the only other comment I would make is the relative to that wrecker, that's a piece of equipment that they're not cheap. I mean, do you want to throw a price out? I mean, we don't even want to throw a price out, but I mean, they're a serious piece of equipment, as you might expect. But when you consider the size of our fleet, and then you consider the fleet of all the different towns, and when you consider all the other types of responses that we respond to, it's a very, very important piece of equipment to have. So going forward, if you have any questions regarding that piece of equipment, please ask Mr. Hajos for any information that you require relative to that. And Kevin, I would ask that you put together a brief memo to the board at large indicating that the wrecker is no longer operational, and that the plan is to move forward with the securing within the budget process, but to move forward with securing replacement.
I will.
Mr. Merlino.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I maybe even suggest you start getting some estimate and prices, because it's going to take, just like cars and trucks we have now, it might take a year to get it. So if we start now, we'll have all that information during the budget season.
That's a very good point, Gene. And Kevin, I think that we're going to have to, not only for ourselves, but for the municipalities, we're going to have some, what do we do between now and then? And I don't know whether, if you've given much thought to that at this stage. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say at this time, I would probably consider until maybe we get something in place, and I may be looking at the cost associated with it, as well as putting out a term agreement for now, maybe for a year, to get record service. Again, knowing that I don't have a significant amount of money in my budget for this, because it's not something that I planned for. But at least we can put out a bid and then see what we get in for bids. And it'd just be for on call. So if you needed it, you'd use it, and it'd be, out to the towns as well. So if they needed it, they could use it also.
Sounds like a plan. All right, then. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McGowan.
Thank you. This sounds almost as a shared service that would be nice if the other towns, would want to chip in, since the county helps them all out. I mean, You know, maybe we can get a rotator. No, I'm only kidding you, but it is amazing what that truck can do and help, and it helps out all the towns. Would that be something that we would look into, or does the county bill out to the towns when you go and help them out?
I believe we do it as a shared service. I'm not sure this is necessarily a billing amount. I think we just do it as a shared service. And the fact of the matter is, we have the guys qualified to use those records as well. You know, and I'm not knocking the towns, but most of them don't. You know, there's certain guys that are qualified, they get record endorsements. You're lifting heavy equipment, you're lifting, or you know, we had a truck, I believe it was Luzerne's truck that went over at embankment, or that
Yeah.
we had helped out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And that's a significant,
Wait,
yeah, it's significant to get that. Now, I'm not saying I'm not opposed to if towns want to.
Oh,
Chip.
sorry, Kevin, that's not where I was going. I was looking for a monetary value to help out the county from the towns that, you know, in the past that have used the truck. You know, because like I said, it's not used all the time, but you're right, you have to be certified in you know, retrievals. So I do watch Highway to Hell, and I really love that.
But I think considering some type of event or fee structure is appropriate. I don't necessarily object. I mean, hopefully, you know, the town, like speaking for my town, hopefully we never need
Right.
it. Hopefully the trucks never leave the road and put themselves or their drivers into a bad situation. But on occasion, in fact, just recently, a couple weeks back, right? A couple weeks back, I think we needed it. So if we had a fee structure, I think that we would be happy to pay it, and maybe you could work on that, Kevin. I mean, it ties up a county employee for some number of hours, and then there's the equipment itself, and that's the cost. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that's a reasonable thing to consider. All right, then. What else do we have, Kevin?
I think that's it.
That's it? Are we ready for the joint committee? Yeah. Mhm. All right, then, Don, do we have any public comment on the privilege of the floor?
Hi, Chairman Conover. Nothing on YouTube right now.
Okay, committee, anything to bring before the committee at this stage? There being nothing, the chair will entertain a motion. I'm sorry.
Just a quick question regarding the replacement of this. Do we have any kind of a fund of equipment or truck replacement fund that, you know, build over the years, or is that not legal? In other words, some municipalities I know put a certain amount of, say, for fire apparatus, that sort of thing, put some money away each year so that when something like this arises, they're not hit with that big bill. I didn't know.
I wouldn't want to speak for the budget process with Supervisor Thomas. We don't. We do a 5-year plan of replacement vehicles. I believe, and if I go back and look at my paperwork, this was on a replacement plan, probably a couple years out. Just like my container truck, I think that probably had on the farthest year out, the 5 year that we would be replacing that container truck. We're currently doing a repair on that for $25,000 so that we can assist some of the towns and ourselves in moving containers around. Right now I'm done. So I have it on a replacement plan, but I don't have any pot of money or fund set aside or reserve for that equipment.
Well, what is the replacement plan about to it? It's not building a fund or anything.
It's just a replacement plan of what we would budget for each year.
Thank you.
All right, now, chair, I'll get a motion to adjourn.
Hi, Chairman Conover. It's Don Lehman. I actually did have an email that was sent in by Diane Collins. I know we didn't have a solid waste agenda, but she asked that it be read at the committee meeting. Is it all right if I read that, or?
Sure.
She's with the Zero Solid Waste Committee. She writes, this is from Diane Collins, Zero Waste Committee. It's been a while since our Zero Waste Committee members have participated in your meetings. We plan to be in touch now monthly. As an update, we are working on an initial report of our site visits to 7 of the 12 town transfer stations. The report, in quotes, revitalizing our transfer stations in Warren County, New York, includes best practices and recommendations. One recommendation, for example, addresses potential markets for old corrugated cardboard. Several towns are now paying high costs to transport this marketable commodity and for Perkins to take it off our hands. We're contacting several New York paper mills now, hoping to find an end market and get paid for old corrugated cardboard. We will keep you posted. Thank you for your attention. Diane Collins, Zero Waste Committee.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. It's good to hear that. It's good to hear that. We're, our markets have really disappeared on recyclables, and if they can find new markets for us, that would be, for less cost disposal, that would be a great thing.
Kind of laudable, but I can tell you right now, doing a lot of business in the paper industry is not going to take that stuff.
Well,
But
let's
worth trying.
let's hear what they have to say, and also I think, Kevin, make sure that that our solid waste staff is plugged into them, and make sure they're communicating with one another so that they're the left hand knows what the right hand is doing.
Yes, Thomas has been attending their zero waste meetings with them.
Good. But then I would have hoped that the committee would have a report from him soon. Okay, thank you. Mr. Bruno?
As long as we're on that real quickly, where do we stand with the fees, et cetera, for the haulers?
The hauling permit fees,
Yeah.
we're all set. We have all the permits have been obtained from us. I want to say it probably brought in about $8,500. If we see that new companies open up, Thomas is always watching for, there's a new company, new firm opening up a business or hauling around the county. He's looking for that. Now he's going out to make sure that nobody's operating in the county. Now he's on his patrol to find out if everybody has the stickers on them. We asked them to put them on a certain spot on their trucks. So if you look, they should be on the back of their mirrors on their trucks. So if you don't see one, please let me know who the company is. But we all the companies that he had on his list and that he could search and find, we've gotten permit applications from all of them.
Thank you.
Right.
Driver, passenger side.
Driver's side.
Yeah, we've come very far, very fast. And I think that, but we've got a long ways to go. Frank?
Does anyone have any suggestions on disposable tires? Seems how Wheel and Grader has decided not to take them anymore.
Not as of yet. We don't. I think Julie and I were talking about doing a new bid just for tires alone and see if we could find somebody else who would take them.
I mean, that's the kind of issue that I think that we need to have our people, working for the county and for the municipalities. Those type of events, that type of changing situations, we need to try to put our best foot forward. It's just not like it used to be. That's for sure. Not at all. So, Frank, Gene.
Speaking about that, I think, I don't know if we're the only town, we've been having trouble with that landfill. Dumping our garbage there that you guys set us up with.
Green Ridge facility.
Yeah, the truck last week got stuck in 2 feet of mud. And we had some damage to our truck about a month ago, picked up a piece of wire, and by the time it got half back into the town, it almost lost its brake line. So we're gonna have to look at some of these ones that, because they're the lowest bidder. I don't know if any other towns having problems, but we are.
We had a couple calls on those, and we have asked Green Ridge that they need to grade off a little better. I understand it's mud season, I guess, for lack of a better way of calling it, but again, there's a lot of trucks that go in and out of there. When our truck was up and running, our driver was giving me the same indication. I've since had Todd Beadnell in my office reach out to them and discuss it with them.
Yeah, they're not covering putting down enough
Material. Yeah.
material to cover what we're riding over.
Yeah.
And I checked with the burn plant and they're just about $25 a ton more, and we used 100 tons last year, so it's a lot of bigger expense to go to the burn plant.
All right, let's adjourn. We have another committee meeting to go, a joint meeting that we have to go into. So at this moment, Chair would then entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Bruno on the motion, second. Mr. Merlino on the second. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carried. Thank you.